Hey, Mind, Body, Spirit Summit folks. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today, I am thrilled to have Derrick Milligan with us. DQ and I met about 22 years ago at a swim immersion training program where he was the coach and I was there to become a better swimmer. And after the weekend, I knew I had met my personal coach and a friend for life. So I'm so stoked to have you here today, DQ. I'll tell you a little bit about him. Ironman, Derrick Q. Milligan, the creator of 2-decade-old Team Dream, Women of Color Triathlon Program, and Social Network. Derrick holds certifications in Go Swim, Inner Train, Total Immersion, Professional Tennis Registry, CHIP Health, which is Complete Health Improvement Project, and Heart Zone Systems. He sits on the board of TriMasters Sports Programs and Kurt's Cafe. He uses the philosophy of flow combined with mastery to guide his clients to peak fitness, personal and professional performances. Through his articles and presentations, workshops, trainings, and teaching sessions, Derrick has positively influenced thousands to find balance and power in life through fitness, training, and wellness education. I mean, I just know, DQ, you have inspired my life. You live your mission. You know, you truly, it comes out of your pores when anybody's around you. And the way that you have devoted yourself to helping others and educating them to be inspired from the inside about their health and wellness is a motivation in my life. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Before we jump into some of the meat of the topic, I'd love you to just share about your journey. It's quite an amazing journey through where you've arrived today through fitness and training for fitness to be about optimal living, right?
Yes, yes. Well, I guess when we spoke earlier, you were struck with the fact that I said I'm one of the few people in the world that's ever seen both their grandmothers survive a heart attack.
Yeah.
And those heart attacks came when I was 24 and 29, respectively, maternal and paternal. And neither grandmother looked like she was enjoying the experience. Yeah. And I've been an athlete my whole life. You know, my mother and father were athletes, and they put athletics and scholarship in front of us at an early age. But at that moment, when I saw the second grandmother survive the heart attack, it hit me that training and fitness were more than just competition and enjoyment. They were about living an optimal life. So I kind of looked at doing the sport triathlon, which I had started in college, as more than just crossing finish lines and standing on podiums, but more a matter of being an insurance premium, because I knew genetically I was inclined to some of the lifestyle diseases that hit too large a proportion of the American population.
Totally. Oh, wow. And I know that you have quite the athletic background. Will you share a little bit about that?
Oh, well, I started swimming at 4, which was great. Neither of my parents were swimmers, so like some non-swimming families, they make sure that the pattern's broken and they get their children in the water. So we were swimming very early. I was on my first swimming teams when I was 6 years old. I swam competitively pretty seriously until I turned 9 and discovered tennis. I've been playing basketball since the age of 5. And I was all city in basketball, I was all state in tennis, and really, really enjoyed the sports quite a bit. So my main focuses in high school were tennis and basketball, but, you know, I still cross-trained. I swam a lot, I biked a lot, I ran a lot to support the. And I started doing triathlon my freshman year of college, and have loved it for lots and lots of years. I'm 53 years old now, and my resting heart rate is 49 beats per minute. Blood pressure's regulated, but you know, and I know if I can do an Ironman, anybody can do an Ironman because I have lots of heart disease on both sides of my family. The grandmothers shared 5 heart attacks, 3 strokes, and a pacemaker. Wow. So we're all made up of nature and nurture. Nature's what we're born with. Nurture is what you teach or train yourself to follow. And I'm a living, breathing proof that nurture does not has a huge impact on the genetics that you're given.
Completely. And I know that you were very influenced to get into triathlons from that and from watching your family and to utilizing that as a way to be fit. And then from there, became inspired to help others utilize the sport of triathlon to bring about life enhancement, right? So utilizing the sport of triathlon as a way to teach tools of life and then also improve their lives. And with that, you've really masterminded and created Team Dream, right? Could you talk a little bit about Team Dream and the people involved and what you guys are up to?
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Teen Dreams are women of color triathlon training and social network. We've been doing it this is our 20th season, so we've been doing it for 20 years. We've had, I like to promote it as women ages 17 to 77 because it sounds
It does.
nice and slick, but to be honest, we've had women up to the age of 84
Wow.
cross the finish line through our program, and as young women child as 8 years old will let a child train and compete with her mother as long as the mother or mother, aunt, grandmother, as long as one of them signs off as guardian will be responsible for the child. And I'm proud to say we've had 7 grandmother, mother, daughter combinations go through the program, and you've never seen anything if you haven't seen 3 generations training, racing, bleeding, sweating together, and laughing. The laughter is just unbelievable. Within the last 5 years, one of our members, Miss Ann Smith, just an amazing Renaissance woman, decided at the age of 72 that she wanted to add triathlon to her bucket list. And I get a phone call while I was doing a 3-hour bike ride, and I just pulled over to take the call. And my life has never been the same since. At 72, this wasn't someone who, sat on her sofa her whole life and decided, oh, let me do this one thing so I can fluff my ego. This is someone who's been achieving at every level. She was a multi-million-dollar insurance broker. She was the first African-American female to be a trustee in the University of Illinois system. She's a chancellor at the university level. Just an amazing, amazing woman, national speaker and poet and world traveler. So I thought I'd just, helping someone sharpen their swimming, and little did I know I was getting a guide to aging well. So Anne went from not only doing her first triathlon in 72, but the Chicago Tribune Q section did a huge feature on her. She's inspired tons of people. Her first 3 races, she placed in the top 3. Qualified for the National Senior Games when she was 77 in triathlon. And going to support her, I took my family to St. Paul, Minneapolis in 2015. The Senior Games, the Nationals are every 2 years, and it moves from city to city. Okay. And she had a PR in the race, which is kind of unheard of for such a high-pressured event.
Yeah,
she's only African-American, female or male, in the event.
Oh, my God.
One of the few women of color. So, she's been blazing trails for a while. She decided because of her soreness in her back, she wanted to focus on swimming.
Yeah.
And then she qualified for 5 events for National Senior Games the next time it came around. So she went from one person in 2015 to inspiring five other teen dreamers. So we took six people to nationals because of her influence
Oh my gosh.
in Birmingham in 2017. And they all said that Birmingham is a bump on the road to Albuquerque, which is 2019. So we're thinking we're going to have 25 to 30 qualifiers for New Mexico. So, and my children, who all are athletes and scholars and really cool people, they're making signs for Auntie Anne, and they're jumping up and down as she's on the course. And for me, as a father, as a parent, is a real blessing to have this example of you don't just wither away and disappear when you're on the other side of 60, but you can have a fully engaged, beautiful, challenge-built life well into your 80s. And for that, I'm forever in Anne's debt for teaching that to my kids and actually teaching it to my wife and I.
Oh, like and choosing and saying I choose to keep living. And you and I were talking about, quality of life versus necessarily always quantity. And if you can each year of your life continue to build and promote to live at its highest ability, what a gift to yourself. And then, like you're saying, it ends up being radiating out and being a gift to others for inspiration.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. You end up liberating others.
Right. Allowing them to say yes, right? Allowing them to choose. And I know that she is such an inspiring story. And there are also dozens of other ones at Team Dream of people who never swam before, never even thought about being an athlete, right?
Well, I think one of the powerful things about Team Dream is the fact that it's a place, and there are many places in the country, not necessarily for women of color, where you're allowed to be supported in your goals and aspirations. You're supported by getting out of your comfort zone.
Right.
Some places you get out of your comfort zone and you're ridiculed or you're set up to be shot down. Here, we constantly push people to get raw and in that area of uncertainty. And you're supported in it. You're celebrated.
Yeah.
Folks circle you physically and psychologically and spiritually that it's okay to be in that awkward, I don't know if I can do it place. And there's a lot of power in that.
And to be held in that and feel accomplished for it versus the first time feeling like if you failed or if it didn't work, instead of looking at something where you're feeling raw and vulnerable as a failure, realizing that's actually a win, right? To actually push yourself outside of that comfort zone, you're winning, Without
a doubt. And I'm glad you mentioned fail because, sometimes in our culture, that's a four-letter word in Western society in America. The worst thing I've ever heard tied to the Olympics is in our lust to chase and support people who win gold medals. Some Americans have termed the silver medalists as first loser. And that's psychologically criminal.
Completely.
You're the second best in the world in your craft.
Yeah, right.
Time and you're first loser. So,
and you were probably like a tenth of a second behind the person in front of you. Yeah.
Or less, depending on the discipline. So, to support someone when they fail in their goal is really powerful. We'll talk in more detail about goals and goal setting. Yeah. But if you hit your goal, then you move forward. Right. If you miss your goal, then you have a wonderful opportunity to evaluate it, to analyze the situation and gain learning. Mm-hmm. So there really is no losing. There's losing when you don't set a goal. There's losing when you don't have a challenge before you, because you don't have as an engaged life as you could.
Totally. And having that relationship to self and then a place that you can go and discover more about yourself through that feedback loop. with people and with your own self, and also numbers. Like you and I, we've talked a ton about how important it is to actually track and
Hmm.
have, and that you love, putting data in clients' hands. And that is empowering. It sometimes can feel at first like you're talking about like a big whoa, right? Because I know for myself at different places in health, just coming off of having a child myself, and I still view myself as being able to go for that certain distance run. And you go out there and you look at it and you go, oh, I'm a different body. I'm a different person right now. And it can be empowering to see those numbers. It can also sometimes be a shocker. And when you're in a certain community, instead of choosing to hide from it, it can actually empower you to make a change, right?
Without a doubt.
Yeah,
We like to think about closing the gap between perception and reality.
right.
And if you don't know your numbers, if you don't have a baseline, then it's hard to quantify the improvements and what's a norm.
Right.
And so the numbers aren't supposed to be a noose around your neck. The numbers are supposed to be, this is my starting point. Where do I go from here?
Right.
And
So,
if you look at human potential, I mean, whether it's world records or just stories that you know of your neighbors or someone completely across the world, that's what expands us as a people.
yeah, is having the data, is having the information in our hands so that we have something to compare it to and to have reality, right? Because I think that um, you know, you utilize different tools inside of your training. Can you talk a little bit about some of those different tools that you think are really important for people to utilize in their training?
Oh, well, I have here one of the newest. We don't talk about heart rate monitors so much anymore. We talk about sensors because
Oh,
there's lots of wearables you can put all over your body. So
okay.
this is one by Heart Zones. It's called the Blink 24. And so it goes on your forearm or your calf, and it has an accelerometer on it.
Hmm.
And the Blink 24 can not only give you your heart rate, your calories, but it can also measure swimming strokes, running steps, cycling cadence. Um, you hook it up to your iPhone, it can even catch power on the bicycle. So
Wow, really?
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And this is state of the art. I've got a prototype. I don't even think it hits the shelves for 2 or 3 more days. But um, fortunately, being in this industry, you get to
Check
see
it
a lot
out.
coming. Yeah. So uh, there are even sensors out there that can capture your sleep. In fact, at a Consumer Electronics Show, fitness technology's been a growing and growing part of the show, but the big hit in fitness technology was sleep. In
Mm,
fact, one vendor had up sleep training for your brain. So we're in a really wonderful area that, for less than $5,000, you can put measurement and analytical equipment in your basement
right.
that gives you better information than they had in the mid 70s when they built the first Olympic training center in the US.
Wow.
So that to me that's amazing. I didn't think I'd see something like that in my lifetime, but everyone can have um, the quantified self, if you will.
Right.
And I'd say don't get too numbers crazy, but just certain baselines that speak to you and you can gauge improvement. But yeah, I've been using heart rate monitors for actually for as long as I've known you, for over 2 decades,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been very important to my life, literally to um,
Living, to be
my
still
living.
living.
Yeah, because it was important based on what I witnessed with my grandmothers that I had a sense of what is standard and what is below standard and um, what is optimal. Where
Yeah.
can I go?
Mm-hmm.
Resting heart rate right now, I'm a little out of shape at 47. The best I've ever seen for myself is 39.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do what I need to do by August to get in the low 40s again.
Yeah. And it keeps you inspired and pushing towards that to then have known also years ago what it was. So for those who want to start keeping track of some stuff now, it's not just valuable now, but it's valuable 5, 6, 7 years from now when you go, wow, when I was really fit, that's where it was, and I want to get back there, right? And
Exactly.
a lot of people use the scale, right? But
Woo.
the scale's not always the best communicator of fitness. I can actually in my life, I can actually be more fit and heavier because I have more muscle on my body and I'm
Exactly.
in
Muscle
elite shape.
density and fat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
this scale has done um, the world a huge disservice.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say on my um, scale of metrics,
Mm-hmm.
I put the scale um, 13th if it makes the list at all.
Right.
I'd rather see blood pressure, triglycerides, LDL, HDL, the inches
Yeah.
measured on your body, dress sizes, jacket sizes. Those things are much more telling when you add it with resting heart rate.
Hmm. Resting heart rate too. Can you talk to people about that? Like how would someone be able to just easily track their resting heart rate?
Very good,
Yeah.
very good. So, a lot of people think of resting heart rate as I'm standing still, erect,
Yeah.
and I take my pulse for 10 seconds, multiply it by six. But just the act of standing raises our heart rate. We at Heart Zones call that your ambient heart rate. If I want my resting heart rate, I'm going to put on a heart rate monitor or a sensor that has a stopwatch function on it.
Okay.
And as I start to ease into sleep, I'll hit start. And when I wake up in the morning, 8.5 hours later, I hit stop. And it's going to show me my max, it's going to show me my average, and it's going to show me the lowest.
Wow.
So just because I've been sleeping that whole time or most of the time, I'll take the average heart rate as my resting heart rate, but a good sensor will tell you your lowest heart rate during that whole cycle.
Dude, I've never done that. That sounds amazing.
I still can teach you after all this
I
time.
know. I want to do it tonight. Oh, that's cool. Because I
About
mean,
being
I think we always did it where what you lay on the floor, you get as quiet as you can. Or in the morning, I would take it first thing in the morning when I haven't done much for like 6 days in a row. But
that gets you close, but it's not
it's not
that
true.
absolute
Yeah.
place, right? It's not the true one. And but as a yogi, you guys can get yourselves in these really low states. So you're probably much closer than the average bear.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be really interesting because you got postpartum, you have all of these new bloodways that have been created.
Totally.
And as one of my um, elite athlete friends told me 2 months after she given birth to her first child, she says, "You're an oxygen delivering machine."
Totally.
So that is one thing women have over men. We never reach this state of just
Optimum.
crazy oxygen delivery based on preparation for
It'd be
delivery.
really cool to. I haven't never done any research to see like, does any of that stay with you then? Going forward, or does it all revert, or could you then train to keep it somehow? It'd be interesting.
There are articles on it. So
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
I'll check it out.
yeah,
Wow. Well, I do think that it's so empowering. So, and also when you were talking about um, things to track, and you were talking about blood pressure and triglycerides, and I think that even for myself, that wasn't even necessarily the first thing I was going to expect you to say. I thought you were going to say heart rate and power outage, and power wattage, and all these kind of things that could be utilized in racing. But actually, you're talking about things that are lifestyle oriented, that are
oh, without a doubt.
right, and really utilizing that information to be what drives whether I'm training correctly for my body, what am I doing for my body, and how am I caring for myself.
Yeah, I would, and it's something new that we've added. I do it with my personal clients. I do it with Team Dream,
Yeah.
where we'll actually get certain medical grade tests. So resting metabolic rate, VO2 max,
Mm-hmm. Wow.
whether you do it on the bike or do it on the treadmill, and a DEXA scan. So I've fallen so in love with these things in the last year. Uh, yeah, it's unbelievable. You can actually coach people much better, and you have a much greater sense of yourself. And it also changes the dialogue from what are you going to do for me, coach, to when you teach the athlete about his or her numbers and what those metrics are. The conversation changes. What are we going to do about this?
Right.
And that's very, very empowering, not only to the athlete, but to the whole training path, coach as well as subject. So let me go through these. Resting metabolic rate.
Yeah.
This test takes about 20 minutes. There's a big giant tank that goes over your head, and it captures the gases as you're in a relaxed state going in and out of your body. That's connected to a computer, and they can dial in and find out. I like to call it your coma state. How many calories does it take for you just to have brain function, heart function? You haven't gotten out of bed, you haven't trained at all, you haven't taken a step. But what this does is it empowers you to know that I have to eat at least this much in calories just to sustain my life. Anything lower than that, I'm doing damage to my body, or I have the potential to.
Yeah.
So the calories are going to come from somewhere. You may end up eating lean muscle mass, which is not desirable if you're not getting enough calories. The example I like to use is I had an obese teenager who at 15 was 268 pounds, had been to fat camps, her word, for the previous 4 summers. And each one of those camps, even though they were different institutions, put her on a 1,100 to 1,200 calorie
restricted
diet. When we tested her resting metabolic rate, it was 2,200 calories, 2,260. So basically, the body was saying, I don't know when you're going to feed me. I'm just going to hold on to everything.
Yeah.
And, there'll be a weight loss because of the calorie deficit. But months later, the weight would all come back and then some. It would be roaring back. Right. So she was literally putting her metabolism into a point of distress.
Right.
You can do some serious long-term damage that way. So by having that number dialed in, let's say yours is 1570. So you know that you have to have at least that many calories, and then your training deficit is going to come in, knowing you can go out and do a 900 calorie expenditure on a bike ride. So maybe above the 1500, you eat another 700 calories. You still will have, in that example, a 200 calorie deficit for that day.
Right.
And that's pretty simple, especially since you are one to combine 2 or 3 workouts during the day. But it becomes much more of a positive trend of health as opposed to you literally terrorizing your body.
Yeah. And then talking about, deeper systems of the endocrine system and all that, and stress response, then your body's going into stress response. You're playing with your hormones. You end up having hormone imbalances. It just ends up creating a disruption to the whole cycle, which is not optimal life, optimal health, right? Sure. So if you're doing this thing that you think is positive for your health, and if you're not necessarily paying attention to those numbers, you could really actually be hurting yourself, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Really hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And, we like to use DEXA scans. So that's body composition. Most hospitals have them. You can find some in some elite level performance labs.
Oh, cool.
But the DEXA scan is going to get you your muscle mass. It'll also get you percentage of muscle. It'll get you your fat mass, also a percentage of that. But what really excites me, especially when we're addressing aging populations is bone density.
Ooh.
So that same young lady I mentioned earlier, even though she wasn't traditionally in her mind athletic, her bone density was above 1.0. So I knew that we could do loads and strength training with weights because her body could handle it. If below 1.0, then we have to make some adjustments, but it's good to know those numbers.
Yeah, super empowering and motivating. How about for the person who resists looking at numbers? How do you, there's definitely people I think that I even know who resist, wanting to know that. How do you approach them?
You still can coach by the numbers. You just don't have to share all the data with them.
Uh-huh.
So even as a guide or a coach or a trainer or exercise physiologist, you still can make key decisions around, okay, what does this week look like? What does this month look like? What does this quarter look like? And spoon feed the decisions around what the numbers are indicating. But you don't have to necessarily push someone to.
Right. And so somebody who, someone who's nervous about looking at that stuff, then maybe the best thing to do is to get a coach and to get somebody who could be your champion and hold that space for you while you're developing some of those skills to look at your own health and wellness.
Yeah, and the best coaches are educators across disciplines. So I'll have a 4-year-old client. Well, the 4-year-old client can't necessarily understand all of the factors that go into their resting metabolic rate. But I can coach around the information from those numbers. And over time, as their math and science improves, we can tell more detailed stories. I think of it as telling stories of the journey, not necessarily bludgeoning someone with heavy numbers, heavy science. I've had literally 7-year-old triathletes understand drag based on the changes in how many miles per hour they go when they're in an aero position versus when they're upright on their bicycles. Right. First, they could feel it, but then they could see their times, and they do understand the times at 7.
Definitely.
And we'll play with different positions, and they'll see the times change. And all of a sudden, this 7-year-old is telling you very detailed information about induced drag. They don't know the term induced drag, but they know the concept.
That's so awesome.
That's the drag that hits you straight on.
Right.
Pilots have taught me that.
And from the get-go, as a young one, they're interested in being physically fit and seeing that different things affect their performance.
Yes.
Yes. So I have a choice if I am like this or like this to affect my performance level. Then they're going to go, well, what other things can affect my performance level?
And I'm so glad you used the word choice.
Yeah.
It's not different. Without the understanding, it might be different things. I'm subject to what the world around me does to me.
Right.
But it spins into I'm a series of my choices, and I'm empowered to walk this world in a manner that I choose fit. And, that's pretty cool. I'll tell you a really funny story because I used to tease my wife, who's a PhD in epidemiology and biostatistics, but on hard sciences side, she has 2 masters, one in genetics and one in microbiology. And so in the early days when we were dating, I go, oh my goodness, I could totally see you with the children's science show. And she's like, shut up, what are you talking about? I'm like, and I'm giving my generation away, but I'm like, we grew up with Captain Kangaroo. I would have turned the channel to you way before I turned to Captain Kangaroo. And, same thing, not to knock Bill Nye. I think he has great information, but just think about all of the young girls who are feeling uneasy about STEM, science, technology, and math, how they be empowered by seeing someone like my wife or seeing someone like you drumming down this information around science and math.
Right.
It was such a hit show. And she's like, she's like, oh, shut up. But Courtney, I would totally produce a show with both of you in these things because I see it when I train children. I see the possibilities.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that you're doing these video conference interviews because to me, that's a stepping stone in the direction where you can really unleash your power.
Oh, thank you. Well, and that is so amazing, and you've always supported me that way, and that is so your mission is helping people understand and unlock their potential and understand what their mission is. I mean, I remember from the get-go, it wasn't just about me performing necessarily the best I could in that event that I was about to do. It was, what's your brand? Who's your person? What's your mission? What are you up to? And letting that be the driver from underneath so that as I'm out there performing, I'm motivated from this choosing my state of being and choosing what I'm putting out there and how that can not only influence me, but also be influencing others. And you really do, anybody that works with you is lucky.
I appreciate that. Well, I remember you as a 19-year-old, and I spout this stuff because it's the essence of me.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing you, and I'm like, gosh, she's really strong. And you cornered me in that parking lot after our workshop. We've been doing this for 2 days amongst 30 other people, and you're going, hey, what's my next step? And I'm like, you can do anything you want. It's such a powerful spirit. At that time, I did not know you'd become an Ironman. I thought you would, but I didn't know it. Definitely didn't know you do all these adventure races.
I don't think I did either.
That's what makes it so great. Become
Right.
a fitness model, run training and nutrition camps, surfing camps in Costa Rica. I mean, those are really powerful things. Become a yogi. I had no concept of that. All I saw was this glow of energy. And I would just wonder, how's it going to manifest? And, to see you a couple of decades later, totally stepping into your power, that's really cool. And you know how many times I've had you come out to speak to Team Dream. You know how many times I've sent you clients. It's just, you're the real deal. And
thank you, DQ.
I'm really happy for your daughter and your other future children to be able to watch your mother train in grace, cross finish lines, climb mountains, swim oceans, literally, as their possibility, because that's what it's about.
Oh, you're making me teary-eyed and inspired, and like you always do, mister. I think too, thank you so much, and it's so, you're so wonderful and eloquent, and I think too, you and I often talk about the nature versus nurture, and that, you would much rather work with someone who's got that hunger, right? Like, and you've seen that before, someone who's a pretty good athlete with hunger, and someone who's like, quote unquote, what they call gifted and not hungry at all, and you're going to work with the hungry person, right? You're going to work with someone who's going, yeah.
I've seen it way too many times where, one of my mentors, Terry Laughlin of Total Immersion, who passed within the last 6 months, used to say talent can be taught. And that's pretty extreme. Talent can be taught, but there is something about that person is hungry and driven. Even if they never reach that same point of the gifted person, they still have maximized their own potential.
Yeah.
And whether you're talking about being a world-class athlete or standing up and walking for the first time, it's about maximizing the potential in your skin. So we all should strive to be the best that we can be, not necessarily comparing yourselves to everyone around. It's about maximizing those gifts we were born with. And I wanted to throw out, you've never heard the story about my father, and it kills me that in 2002, at the age of 61, he died of his first and only heart attack. It was a situation where he didn't smoke. He rarely drank, like maybe a glass of wine at a social outing once a month.
Mm.
He walked 3 days a week, lifted weights, played tennis 5 days a week, but he had a lot of unaddressed corporate stress.
Wow.
And even though he is in his retirement, all those years of just swallowing it, just muscling through
Yeah.
uncomfortable situations, not necessarily taking a yoga class or meditating or just talking to someone to de-stress, it added up. And he had sleep apnea, so he drove into a hospital to get a sleep study done. And I guess they measured him from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. He wakes up and says, "Hey, I'm awake." And they go, "Well, you can either leave now. We got all the data we need, or you can go back to sleep for the next hour. The study ends at 7 a.m. He goes back to sleep, has a heart attack during that last hour, and dies in the hospital. So he drove himself as an outpatient situation. He's completely monitored at a very good hospital, and he dies. And so, that's
Wow.
16 years ago. And, I was actually training him to swim. He'd never been a swimmer. I was training him to swim during that time, and I can't believe he's right in front of me, and I don't see these signs. So that was kind of a change in my curve from this is a great lifestyle. I love what I do. I love meeting people to I need to be an expert's expert. I need to help put more boots on the street because, my dad had a wonderful life, but he never got to meet um, my wife, uh, my children, his grandchildren. And that breaks my heart because I knew we had him. I took it for granted that we had him for 20, 25
more years.
So, and he, he didn't abuse his body a whole lot, but that stress, it sneaks up on you for sure. And we have a lot of people in America who wear that as a badge of honor. I work extremely hard.
Right.
I have a lot of pressure on me. I grind it out. I go, what's the term when you do sleepless nights? I did 2 all-nighters to get ready for that project. Well, that's not exactly optimal life balance. And you and I discussed my favorite definition of health, and it's from that old Patch Adams movie with Robin Williams, and it said the actual Dr. Patch Adams actually says, my definition of health is to do what you want to do when you want to do it. Well, I don't know of anything more powerful than that. To do what you want to do when you want to do it. That pretty much captures the spectrum without being real number heavy. So
completely, and having that be the feedback even in itself. Like, in that moment, if I'm choosing that I want to sprint across the park with my 7-year-old cousin, and I'm noticing I can't do it, that's maybe a little note to self of what would want to be shifted. That's in a way, like a quantifiable, right? It's something that you can look at, and your story about your father is so powerful and really inspiring for wanting to know that some of those deeper numbers too, because there is a lot of silent, or what we think is silent stuff happening inside of ourselves, and also you're right, America, or in the United States, if you ask someone, how are you? Oh, I'm busy. It's like one of the first responses you get. I'm busy. And there's pride. There's pride with that. There's like all this pride where, what if it was, I don't know, I'm having a really relaxed day. I got to have a cup of tea with my daughter this morning, and then I drove her to school, and then I walked leisurely over to my, what if that was the way that we could exist and actually be supported for that? I think that could be empowering as well.
I think you're capable of starting that movement. And so it's important to change that dynamic because the quality of work, I don't think it's gotten better with people grinding themselves to an early grave.
Right.
And the thing about it, even if they don't die young, and I consider 61 for my father to be very young, even if they don't die young, how good is the quality of life? If I lived to be 90, but I was connected to a respirator and I couldn't climb stairs for the last 15 years of those 90 years, I'm not sure that's a high quality of life. If I'm in a situation where my concentration is so blown I can't even read a book, I'm not sure if that's ideal. We haven't even gotten into substance abuse. So, um, yeah, I think high quality of life, being able to do what I want to do when I want to do it, that's pretty cool. I know my dad would have wanted to have hugged his grandchildren. And um, the beautiful thing that I can reflect on my father's life was 10 years before he died, we were shooting hoops in his backyard, and he told me, my life has exceeded my wildest dreams.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful.
Mm.
And, we didn't miss a beat. We kept shooting. We weren't even looking at each other, just the sound of the ball going through the basket and bouncing on the driveway. And I remember I told him, I said, wow, I'm really happy for you. How many people get to say that? That's a beautiful thing. So I know the quality of his life was great. He had great purpose. He had great challenge. There are things that he felt good about completing, but he left too soon. And, this is a son who's just sad that he didn't get to laugh and share wisdom and be guided by this man for a few more decades.
Yeah. Oh,
It happens every day.
it does. It does. And so with that, the nugget is to what? To be empowered to keep track, be empowered to have the quality of life that you choose through knowing yourself and actually tuning into yourself. What else would you?
And being present to yourself. I mean, I'm sure because of generational stuff and cultural stuff, him addressing his stress by just swallowing it and, internalizing it, that was considered mature and tough,
Yeah.
and I'm saying, no, let's be completely human,
Yeah.
let's work out the things that really grind us internally with the same diligence that we run a sub 6 mile.
Yeah.
There's steps we can take.
Yeah, we can transfer those devotional skills. I recently switched using the word discipline to devotion for myself.
Ooh, I like that.
Because it really helps me switch it from that old mentality of, no pain, no gain, and the way I used to drive myself, because I was always driving myself away from anxiety, versus maybe actually being devoted to understanding myself better and being my best means looking at that anxiety and then looking at what skills could help me deal with that. So the same exact running that I used to use to abuse to stay away from anxiety can now actually be the outlet for relieving it. But it comes from a place of knowing and witnessing versus and being devoted to the practice versus feeling like, oh, I have to be disciplined and I must reach those numbers. How about knowing what numbers are actually really healthy for myself to be at? Because that's the same thing with the resting heart rate. That doesn't lie. And if I actually utilize that number correctly, I'll know when I'm overtraining, when I'm undertraining, whether that actually means for an event or even in life. So am I working too hard? Are the people who are at the corporate, positions, by looking at that number, by looking at those other numbers, you can have an understanding of whether you are healthy, right? And have that be something that's empowering. Yeah.
Yeah, personally, I think people ought to find their third place. So we talk about home, work, and then a third place, or home, school, and then a third place. So probably one of the most famous televised third places in America is that bar in Cheers. Norm walks into the bar and they all know his name.
Everybody knows your name.
And he has his own stool and he's drinking himself into oblivion and telling stories. Well, I think the concept of the third place is awesome. I
Right.
don't necessarily think the concept of a bar is your third place being optimal,
Right.
but you can have different training groups. I see
Yeah.
them all over America. You can have different gyms. You can have different recovery lounges.
Yeah.
You know, I go into corporations now and help the corporation offer third place options to their employees, that make them a higher quality worker and a better, less stressed person.
Right.
You in your forum can create third places. So
Makes you better at home too, right? When you're,
without a doubt,
yeah.
without a doubt. And a third place doesn't have to be a physical structure.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the 7 women that you go to do crew with on a Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's important to have identity groups,
Mm-hmm.
and you might blow yourself off for um, a workout or a meeting, but you're not going to blow your group off if it's meaningful to you that many times. So
I can't tell you how many Sunday mornings I've, gone to church before I've gone to church, right? Where I'm meeting 5 of my best buds, guys and gals, out for a morning run in the woods, and I'm like, that's my church as well. Getting out, getting with them, getting that community, because it's so empowering. But also, there was plenty of Sunday mornings where I would have pushed the snooze button if it was just me.
right,
But if I'm going to be meeting, 4 of my buddies out there, or even one more, right? I'm going to show up. So that just gets into the whole um, theme of community, of having workout buddies, having buddy systems, right?
hmm
And just how important that is, and that in creating also that, I love that third place, because so many people get so involved with their work that, and then their life balance goes off, their work life balance goes off, so then they have to focus at home. But maybe sometimes even the most important thing would be, what's that third thing that would help them round out, help them feel that there is more than just the work and more than just family. There's actually this thing that they're still feeling empowered by, could then filter out and empower both.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
There's actually, it's so funny. There's this Korean spa. You introduced me to the idea of infrared saunas.
yeah.
And I actually found a lot of sources all over the country for infrared saunas because my body just loves the response.
Mm-hmm.
And these Korean spas, and um, kids were on spring break out of town at a relative's home. And so my wife and I got to, be a single couple, not
Yeah.
single,
Whoa,
but a childless
right?
couple
Yeah.
for a week. And told the kids are like, oh, what'd you guys do? And we're like, oh, we went to this one spot that they love to go to. And they're like, oh, man. And I thought it was so beautiful that my youngest, a 9-year-old, is totally upset that we dared go to the spot where he gets totally relaxed without him, because we go as families. And I'm going, that's really healthy.
Yeah. That's your third place with the family. That's the place that you
It's
go.
one of
Yeah.
it's one of
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, but
Oh,
the whole concept of Korean spas is the whole family goes. I mean, you can
right.
go back to post World War II, and the whole community just shows up, and it's a beautiful thing. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, that's so cool. And thinking of too, with that, you had this time with just the two of you again, and also time. So I know that I want to think about time right now, but I also want to think about the fact that I know you have this special offering that you wanted to give to our community, and so that they could start understanding a little bit of their own goal setting and their, focus on time throughout the week. So would you take a few minutes just to explain that?
not a problem.
Okay.
Excellent segue.
Mm-hmm.
So let me share my screen. And okay, so can you see the time of your life?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so this is on my TriQuest letterhead. And what I like to do in workshops, just to get people to really lock in on the choices they're making, is
Yeah.
I'll hand this out sometimes with really, really stressed out CEOs. I don't even just do 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. I'll go 6 a.m. to 5:59 a.m. I'll do a full 24-hour cycle.
Wow.
But we all have 168 hours in a week, and I just ask them in this chart to put down how they spend their time, how much time they spend grooming, how much time they spend watching television, even putting down what shows they're watching at what time. Um, One of the things I think is great is the fact that now you can DVR or TiVo your shows and watch them when you choose to watch them. I think that helps a lot in terms of controlling your time. But when folks start seeing, okay, 168 hours a week, and I'd like to do an Ironman in 18 months, and I don't have any background in it, but based on these choices I'm making, I've only got 5 hours to train, then they got to make some changes. And it's amazing the response I get when, after going through this chart, I tell my audience that you have to make an unescapable appointment with yourself, an uncompromisable date
Right.
with yourself. And, some just kind of drop their mouth open and they're like, how could I ever do that?
Right.
But then you start finding spaces. So the time of your life, go through the chart, figure out how you're using that 168 hours, even down to how many hours you're sleeping. Then the next thing we'll do is go through your goals. And we'll go short term, 90 days or less, 1 year. And I like to have a big, juicy, obnoxious 3-year goal.
Love it.
So as you're breaking these down, it's really important that you put a date and you even visualize a specific place where that goal will be realized.
Mm.
So using the Ironman example, you might want to do Ironman New Zealand, which was my first, and I loved it. It's a great place. And you'll put the date, used to happen in February. You'll put the place, Lake Taupo, New Zealand, about 2 hours south of Auckland. And you may want to even go, I'd like to do that swim in 71 minutes. I want to make sure I'm off the bike in 7 hours. And I'd like to do a 4-hour run. Be as specific as possible. If you don't put the dates and the detail in, you don't really have a goal. You have a dream.
Right.
Not knocking dreams, but it's hard to manifest dreams and hard to get the learning if you don't have a specific timeline involved. So if I hit my goal, great. I reassess and I set a new one. If I miss my goal, especially if it's a well thought out, well planned goal, then I'm going to gain some learning because someplace in there I missed a key thought point.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally, completely. Yeah.
The
It's
big,
feedback.
juicy, obnoxious 3-year divine goal. Well, it's great if your short-term and 1-year goals feed into those, but it doesn't have to be. But it might be a high school reunion. It could be a 3-day walk. But you know what's juicy and obnoxious to you, and by setting something that may be a little bit out of your comfort zone, you're really, really making an interesting journey.
Yeah.
And it's fun to look back on these things. So we talked about flow earlier. I'm going to release my screen. Go back to you. We talked about flow earlier, and the concept of flow is raising challenges and raising skills. So as you do this dance, it becomes really powerful. If your skills, and we'll call, actually, if your challenges, and we'll use another word for challenges as goals, is way higher than your skill level, what happens to you?
Right. You don't make it.
You not only don't make it, you'll probably get frustrated. You'll get pretty upset by it.
Yeah.
If your skills are way higher than your goals or your challenges, what happens? And there's actually a payoff there, and we see it with our teenagers all the time.
What do you see?
Well, if your skills are way higher than your challenges, you never fail.
Mm.
But you also don't grow. You also don't have an engaged life. So you need this dance. And that's why Ann Smith can go from qualifying for 5 swimming events at the Senior Olympics to, all right, I'm going to qualify for 4, but I'm going to PR on all 4, and I want to stand on the podium on 1. Standing on the podium isn't really totally in her control because it's impacted by the other swimmers around her. But doing a PR in all 4 is definitely within her control because it's her swimming those events faster than she's ever swum before. Wow. And she can control for that, regardless of if Michael Phelps or Missy Franklin's in the adjoining lanes next to her.
Wow. That's,
so, yeah, we want to do that dance, dance of mastery, that dance of flow.
The dance of flow.
The dance of flow.
Oh, DQ, you rock.
Thank you.
So how can people get access to that worksheet?
Oh, they can email me. Why don't we email me at derrick.milligan@heartzones.com. And I'll email it right out.
Good. And can you spell that out?
Sure. DERRICK MILLIGAN @heartzones, it's plural, HEARTZONES.com.
Beautiful.
And I'll get that out right away.
Oh, I'm so thrilled, so excited. Thank you so much, DQ. You're the best. And people are just going to so benefit from this and from you and from gaining access to that material. You rock. I love you.
I appreciate that. Well, I'm really proud of you, and keep helping people.
Thank you.